Okay, so today we're diving into um, some really cool computer science stuff. This Google project SpeciesNet. Have you heard about this one?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Basically, they're using AI to analyze wildlife images from camera traps. You know, those cameras set up in the wild to capture animal activity.
Yeah, exactly. So much data, though, right? Like imagine trying to sort through thousands or even millions of images to identify all those animals.
Oh, it would be a nightmare for ecologists. Trying to do that manually would just be incredibly time consuming. So that's where SpeciesNet comes in. It automates that whole process using AI.
So it's like AI to the rescue for wildlife conservation.
Pretty much. And the really clever part is that they use an ensemble approach.
Ensemble approach. So what does that mean?
Well, think of it like a team of experts, each specialized in a different aspect of image analysis. So there's a detector model that first figures out if there's an animal, a human, or a vehicle in the image.
Okay, so it's not just blindly trying to identify every blob in the image. It's first filtering out the non-animal stuff.
Exactly. And then if an animal is detected, a classifier model comes into play to determine the species.
Ah, so it's a two-step process. First detect, then classify. Makes sense.
Yep. And that's where things get even more interesting because SpeciesNet also takes location into account.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
An animal found in Africa is probably not going to show up in a photo from North America.
Exactly. So they use something called geofencing to rule out unlikely predictions based on where the image was taken.
So it's like having a virtual map of animal distributions around the world.
Precisely. And if the model isn't totally sure about a specific species, it can use what's called taxonomic roll-ups to make a more general prediction.
Oh, I see. So instead of saying lion, it might just say big cat if the evidence isn't strong enough.
Right. It's a way of being more cautious and avoiding overly specific claims when the AI isn't totally confident.
That's pretty clever. Now, for our listeners who are into the nitty-gritty of computer science, can you tell us a bit more about the technology behind these AI models?
Sure. So the detector component of SpeciesNet uses a model called megadetector, which is based on a deep learning architecture known as convolutional neural networks.
Convolutional neural networks, those are the ones that are particularly good at analyzing visual data, right?
Exactly. They're kind of the workhorse of image recognition these days. The classifier, on the other hand, uses a different type of model, either an always crop or a full image model.
Okay, so what's the difference between those two?
Well, always crop models require a bounding box around the animal, which is provided by the detector. They then focus solely on that cropped region to analyze the animal's features in detail.
So it's like zooming in on the animal to get a closer look.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Full image models, on the other hand, analyze the entire image, potentially picking up on contextual clues from the surrounding environment.
Ah, so they each have their own strengths and weaknesses depending on the situation.
Exactly. And that's why the ensemble approach is so powerful. By combining the results of these different models, SpeciesNet can make more robust and accurate predictions.
It's like the wisdom of the crowd, but for AI.
Uh-huh. Good analogy.
Okay, so let's say a researcher wants to use SpeciesNet. Is this something they can run on their own computer, or is it a Google-only thing?
Nope, it's open source. Anyone can use it. It's available as a Python package installable via pip.
That's great. So walk us through it. How would you actually use this package?
You'd start by installing the SpeciesNet package using pip. Then you'd use the main script run model.py to run the analysis. You can feed it various inputs like a folder of images, individual image files, or even JSON files listing images and their metadata.
Metadata. That's where you can include information like location, which ties into the whole geofencing feature we were talking about.
Exactly. The more information you provide, the more accurate and insightful the results can be.
So I can run the whole SpeciesNet pipeline at once, but it sounds like there's also flexibility to run things step by step.
Yep. You can choose to run only the detector or only the classifier, depending on your needs. That's pretty flexible.
Very cool. It's like having a Swiss Army knife of AI tools for wildlife image analysis. Now, I know a lot of our listeners are into the tech side of things. Can you talk a little bit about the technical details of running SpeciesNet, particularly for those who are familiar with GPUs and their advantages for faster processing?
Sure thing. So SpeciesNet can indeed utilize GPUs, which can really speed things up, especially with large data sets. However, there's a slight quirk when it comes to running it on Windows.
A quirk. Tell me more. I love quirks.
Well, the detector component megadetector uses PyTorch, which works seamlessly with GPUs on Windows.
Okay, so far so good.
However, the classifier is based on TensorFlow, which needs to be run within Windows subsystem for Linux or WSL on Windows machines to utilize GPUs.
Ah, so a little bit of a workaround for Windows users.
Right. but it allows them to harness the power of their GPU for faster classification.
Good tip for our Windows users out there.
Okay.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about a real-world application. Imagine we have a camera trap image from the Amazon rainforest. What happens when we feed that into SpeciesNet?
Okay, so picture this. We have an image from the Amazon. The detector goes to work scanning the image and identifying a potential animal. Let's say the classifier initially predicts it as a jaguar.
Sounds promising, but I'm guessing there's more to the story.
Right, because SpeciesNet doesn't stop there. It takes into account the location of the image using its built-in geofencing knowledge. So let's say the specific type of jaguar predicted doesn't actually inhabit that particular region of the Amazon.
Ah, so that's where geofencing comes in to refine the prediction.
Yep, SpeciesNet might then adjust its prediction, perhaps suggesting a more general category like jaguarundi, a smaller wildcat found in that region. Or if the confidence level is still too low, it might simply say wildcat.
So it's saying, I'm pretty sure there's a cat in this picture, but I need more information to be certain about the exact species.
Exactly. That level of caution is really important for scientific applications where accuracy is crucial.
This has been a fascinating look into the technology behind SpeciesNet. It's amazing to see how AI is being used to tackle real-world problems like wildlife conservation.
I agree. It's a great example of the power of computer science to make a positive impact.
And speaking of impact, in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how SpeciesNet is actually being used in the field to revolutionize conservation efforts. So stay tuned.
So, we've talked about all the technical stuff about SpeciesNet, but what really gets me excited is how it's actually being used to help conservation efforts.
Right. It's one thing to have a fancy AI tool, but it's another thing entirely to actually use it to make a real difference for wildlife.
Exactly. And one of the biggest challenges in conservation has always been simply knowing where animals are and how their populations are changing.
Yeah, you can't really protect a species if you don't know where to find it or if its numbers are going down.
Right. And traditionally, monitoring wildlife populations involved so much manual work. Researchers had to set up camera traps, collect the images, and then spend hours and hours just looking through them, trying to identify and count animals.
That sounds incredibly tedious, and not to mention prone to human error. Yeah. I can definitely see how AI could streamline that whole process.
And that's exactly what SpeciesNet does. By automating the image analysis, it frees up researchers to focus on, actually designing and implementing conservation strategies.
It's like having a tireless, super efficient assistant that can handle the grunt work, leaving the humans to focus on the bigger picture.
Perfect analogy. And because SpeciesNet is so much faster than manual analysis, researchers can get near real-time insights into what's happening out in the field.
Near real time.
Yeah.
That sounds like a huge advantage.
Yeah.
What kind of impact does that have on conservation efforts?
Well, it means that if a species is suddenly disappearing from an area, conservationists can potentially intervene much more quickly. It gives them a chance to address the problem before it's too late.
That's really cool.
Yep.
So we've talked about tracking populations, but can SpeciesNet do more than just count animals? Can it tell us anything about their behavior?
Absolutely. SpeciesNet isn't just about counting heads, it's also about trying to understand animal behavior. By analyzing patterns in the images, researchers can learn about things like animal movement patterns, their interactions with each other, and even how they respond to changes in their environment.
Wow, so it's like being able to observe the secret lives of animals without actually disturbing them.
Exactly. And that's really important because camera traps are already a non-invasive way to study wildlife. And SpeciesNet takes that to another level by minimizing the need for human intervention.
I can see how this would be especially beneficial for researchers studying elusive or endangered species, where minimizing disturbance is crucial.
Right. And there are other interesting applications too. For example, SpeciesNet can be used to identify individual animals based on their unique markings.
Oh, wow. That's like giving each animal a digital fingerprint. How does that work?
Well, animals often have distinctive patterns on their fur or scales, and SpeciesNet can be trained to recognize those patterns and link them to specific individuals.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I imagine that kind of information is incredibly valuable for tracking those individuals over time and understanding their movements and behavior.
Absolutely. It helps researchers gain a much deeper understanding of the animals they're studying and ultimately make more informed conservation decisions.
So it's not just about collecting data, it's about using that data to actually protect these animals.
Right, and one of the most exciting possibilities is that SpeciesNet could be used to create a global database of wildlife images, all analyzed and organized by AI.
A global database. That would be an incredible resource for conservationists worldwide.
Imagine being able to see trends in animal populations across continents or identify hotspots of biodiversity that need extra protection.
That would be a game changer for conservation.
I think so too. It would allow us to see the interconnectedness of ecosystems in a whole new way.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but are there any challenges or limitations that researchers are still working on with SpeciesNet?
Well, as with any technology, there are always challenges. One of the biggest is the need for large amounts of high-quality training data.
So it's like the old saying, garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
If you train the AI on bad data, you can't expect good results.
Exactly. The accuracy of SpeciesNet's predictions depends heavily on the quality and diversity of the images it's trained on. And sometimes, especially for rare or elusive species, getting that data can be really difficult.
That makes sense. Are there any other limitations to consider?
Another issue is data bias. If the training data is skewed towards certain types of images or locations, it can affect the model's ability to generalize to new situations.
So the AI might make assumptions based on what it's seen before, and those assumptions might not hold true in other parts of the world or for different populations of the same species.
Right. So researchers are constantly working to improve the quality and representativeness of the training data. They're also developing new techniques to try to mitigate bias and make the models more robust.
So it's an ongoing process of refinement and improvement, which is understandable for any new technology.
Absolutely. But even with those challenges, SpeciesNet is already making a real difference in conservation. It's a great example of how we can use computer science to address important environmental problems.
I completely agree.
Oh.
It's inspiring to see AI being used for good.
Mm-hmm.
And for our listeners who want to learn more about specific examples of how SpeciesNet is being used in action, we'll be diving into some real-world case studies in the next part of our deep dive. So stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about the tech behind SpeciesNet and all its potential, and now I'm really excited to hear about some specific examples of how it's actually being used.
Yeah, there's some amazing stories out there. One that comes to mind is the work being done in Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique.
Gorongosa National Park, I've heard of that. Where is it again?
It's in Mozambique, and they've been using SpeciesNet to monitor the recovery of wildlife populations after a really bad civil war.
Oh, wow. So they're using it to track how the park is bouncing back from that conflict. That's incredible. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Before SpeciesNet, they had to rely heavily on manual image analysis, which was a really slow and difficult process. But now with SpeciesNet, they've been able to analyze huge amounts of data much faster and more efficiently.
It's really making a difference in their conservation efforts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's given them valuable insights into, the distribution and abundance of all sorts of species, and they can track the park's recovery almost in real time.
That's so cool. And it's not just in Africa, right? SpeciesNet is being used all over the world.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's being used to study everything from jaguars in the Amazon to snow leopards in the Himalayas.
It's really exciting to see how this technology is helping conservation efforts on such a global scale.
It really is. And, we've talked a lot about how SpeciesNet benefits researchers, but there's also a push to make it more accessible to people who might not be, coding experts.
Oh, that's interesting. So are there any efforts to kind of create a more user-friendly version of SpeciesNet?
Yeah, definitely. The goal is to make it accessible to a much wider audience, like citizen scientists, park rangers, even students.
That's awesome. I can imagine so many people wanting to contribute to conservation if they had the right tools.
Exactly. And democratizing access to this kind of technology is really important for scaling up conservation efforts worldwide. Imagine a future where anyone with a smartphone can help monitor wildlife just by taking a picture.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think about the potential of AI to connect people with nature in that way.
I know. It's a really exciting time to be working in this field, and I think we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of SpeciesNet. It's clear that this technology is a real game changer for conservation, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
I agree. It's been a pleasure talking about it with you.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. If you're interested in learning more about SpeciesNet or exploring other cool applications of AI, be sure to check out the links in our show notes. Until next time, happy exploring.